Straight nights, the return of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. America's richest night of television starts at 7/6 Central tonight on ABC.
Well, Governor George W. Bush stepped in it this week. At least he was invited to step in it by a television reporter who said, all right, name the leaders of Pakistan, India, Taiwan, and Chechnya. Mr. Bush got 1 out of 4. Later, on Friday, we talked to the governor in which he defended himself and his answers. Here is a portion of both of those interviews.
Can you name the president of Chechnya?
No, can you?
Can you name the president of Taiwan?
Yeah, Lee.
Can you name the general who's in charge
Wait a
of
minute,
Pakistan?
is this a 50 questions?
No, it's 4 questions of 4 leaders and 4 hotspots.
The new Pakistani general has just been elected. He's not elected. This guy took over office. He appears he's going to bring stability to the country, and I think that's good news for the subcontinent.
And you can name him.
General, I can't name the general.
And it's
General.
And the Prime Minister of India?
The new Prime Minister of India is, no.
Do you think the question was a fair question? Do you think the quiz was fairly put?
I think that reporters get to ask the question, and I get to try to answer them. And America understands that a guy doesn't know the name of every single foreign leader. That's not what America's making their choices on about who's going to be the president. People are making their choice based upon judgment, based upon vision, based upon philosophy. That's how people are deciding the presidency. And the truth of the matter is, you're a wily enough professional. You can trick me on any question anytime you want.
Vice President Gore's assistant said, well, that, you know, Governor Bush said he got a C in school, and I guess that is really a gentleman's C. Kind of a poke.
Well, that's old-style Washington politics. That's the way they like to campaign. They like to campaign belittling the other person. I like to take my time when I talk to a fellow like you talking about what I want to do. What I want to do as President of the United States. And I fully concede. People can trip me up with questions. But the American people, those are the people who are going to have the ultimate decision in this campaign.
In your answer, you volunteered concerning the new military leader of Pakistan, that you thought perhaps that would bring stability to the subcontinent. Were you endorsing the overthrow of democratically elected government?
Of course not. No, I wasn't. That was a misinterpretation by a potential opponent.
Well, what did you mean by that, then?
I said, I echoed the sentiments, by the way, of members of the Clinton administration that were optimistic that the current general who had taken over Pakistan was going to bring stability to the region. And I'll be glad to provide you with quotes of the current administration's own leaders that were expressing optimism. And I was expressing optimism as well.
Well, all right. Here on the round table, Bill Kristol, George Stephanopoulos, welcome. Let's talk about this. What do you think?
Well, obviously, he wasn't ready. And it is a serious question because it shows that by not being prepared, it shows that he's not taking the campaign seriously, not taking foreign policy seriously.
You'd not be prepared to name the leader of Chechnya?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, this guy is known. This guy, Andy Hiller, the Boston TV interview. You know if you go up and do an interview with him, you're going to get a pop quiz. Should Bush have known Chechnya? No. But should he have known how to answer and parry off the pop question and go to the underlying issues? Yes.
Okay. The problem, you wily professional you, is...
Well, he invites me to trick him. That's a good answer because I can't, of course, try it then.
The problem for George Bush in this interview, look, anybody is sympathetic. First of all, I think he gets some sympathy because nobody knows the president of Chechnya. But I do think that the problem for him is that it plays into his already perceived weakness, which is that a certain lightweightedness. Governors always get charged with not knowing much about foreign policy, and he's a governor who clearly doesn't know very much about foreign policy. If he were being tripped up on baseball or on Mexico or on something that he knows a great deal about, it wouldn't resonate at all. Well, but it's because this is already playing into where he's weak.
Well, Bill, is this George W. Bush's potato spelling?
I knew you couldn't go through a whole 1.5 minutes before getting to that.
Because he's a wily professional.
He is a wily professional. No. I mean, Dan Quayle, fairly or unfairly, and I think it was unfair, already had a reputation into which potato, the misspelling of potato, where he read a cue card given to him by the teacher, let me just say for the record, that played into an already existing reputation. Koki's right. Look, Governor Bush's response to you was, judge me by my vision for the country. Judge me by my general philosophy of foreign policy. He'll lay that out in about 10 days. He's giving a speech at the Reagan Library. There'll be a lot of foreign policy issues to discuss, serious issues over the next 2-3 months. I think it's a vulnerability for Bush. It's McCain's great opportunity, but I don't think this pop quiz does much damage.
He may not be Dan Quayle, but he could be George Romney. 1968. George Romney, a popular, moderate governor, doing very well. Brainwashing on Vietnam, gets tripped up.
On Poland.
Right, because it feeds into this discomfort.
George Will, you know Blake? Could you have passed that test?
No, I would have got 1 and 4, and I would have got the one that he got. And I also will fail, I'll just say preemptively, the next test that someone will give to one of these candidates, which is how much does a pound of hamburger cost?
See, that's what America cares about, though.
I understand, and it's supposed to demonstrate that the candidate's out of touch with the great unwashed and all that. But let me just remind you of one thing. 7 decades ago, a governor preparing to run for president was looked upon by the foremost columnist of the day, who said of him, a pleasant man who, without any important qualifications for the office, would very much like to be president. Walter Lippmann, Franklin Roosevelt.
Right.
Now, I don't think the American people care a hoot about this. I think that they are, in the end, going to judge whether or not the man has good character, sound judgment, and good advisors.
Well,
when I heard about this,
though, Sam, and I'm curious because Bill's just talked about his general foreign policy and all of them, and did you get a sense of all of that, what he's talking about?
glad you asked, because in 2020 we have this big interview, and we're going to show it a week from Wednesday on the 17th of November, and we talk about, does he know, it's serious, you're right, does he know about foreign policy? Does he know what the Clinton doctrine is, and does he subscribe to it, things like that? But maybe I just also say, when I heard about this quiz, I thought about Ronald Reagan coming out to the Rose Garden as president and introducing Chairman Moe, a guy named Samuel K. Doe, and a lot of people, including you, George, think that he was a very great president. So this doesn't amount to Hillary.
When someone, the time comes, if Mr. Bush is president, they say, who's the head of X, Y, or Z, he will either turn to his right to Paul Wolfowitz or perhaps to his left to Colin Powell or Dick Cheney. Don't know.
Okay, now let me just change the subject to the opponent. I mean, John McCain is coming up in the polls, clearly in New Hampshire, although there's still a gap there. But the rap on McCain this week is, what a temper.
Well, it moved from temper to temperament, and that becomes more of a problem, I think. Temper, you just got jokes about other presidents having tempers. But when the Arizona Republic does an editorial saying there's a problem with his temperament, the governor of Arizona, who has endorsed George W. Bush, starts to talk that way, and people start whispering in the halls, then it becomes another thing. You've been up on the Senate, in the Senate this week, listening on this subject.
Well, Senator McCain says 3 things. He says he did have a problem early in his career holding his temper, that he still gets incensed over gross injustices, that is, matters of public policy. And third, he says, do I insult anybody or fly off the handle or anything like that? No, I don't. Well, I've been talking at length to his colleagues, and it's a journalistic problem because none of them are going to go on the record about a colleague, but they say all 3 of those are false.
This will hurt him, though, only if people see it in the campaign. He's going to have to demonstrate it over the course of the campaign. I also think there's a chance he could use it to his advantage. Everybody's talking about authenticity. As long as he doesn't run away from it and says, this is the real me, love it or leave it, he'll be okay.
Well, so far, that's what he's doing,
It hurts him only if people see it from the standpoint of getting votes. As a president, does it hurt to have a huge temper? Well, your president is reputed to have, Bill Clinton is reputed to have had a huge temper in private.
I mean, name me a president in the last 30 years, with the exception perhaps of Ronald Reagan, who didn't have a
he
had tough times.
Well, he did, but let me say this about McCain. No one really charges him with having a bad temper with regard to his staff, underlings, helpless 22-year-old assistants. When he blows up, it's at senators and governors, and then they whine off the record. They won't go on the record. Why not? Why not? If this man doesn't have the temperament to be president of the United States, a senator in the United States Senate has the obligation to stand up and say so. I think these genuinely are cheap shots at McCain. I mean, unless there's a real problem, which I haven't seen.
I think that's a very good point. I really do. I think that the idea that they whisper to us and are not willing to say it out loud, and I understand the reason for it, but if they are at a point where they think it's real and he is getting close to winning.
But McCain did make a mistake by charging the Bush campaign with feeding this and fueling this. He
Yes,
should be
that's
rising above all this and not get into the campaign tactics.
George Will, what do you think? Do you think a temper like the one people told you about, they won't go on the record, is a disqualifier?
No, it's not a disqualifier, but particularly if he gets incensed about Trent Lott's aircraft carriers or something like that. What is disturbing about these stories, and again, I share the belief that they ought to, and perhaps soon will, come forward with some of these stories is that they are so often stories about personal pique, that he didn't like being opposed. And that does go to the question of whether or not you're going to deal with all the people in this town who disagree with you, even when you're president.
There are
But
people...
the one story that's out there, and the one that's been attested to and not challenged, Senator Richard Shelby, when a Democrat in 1989, promises McCain he will vote to confirm John Tower, a close friend of McCain's, as Secretary of Defense. Under pressure from the Democratic leadership and Sam Nunn, who are opposing Tower, Shelby switches his vote at the last minute. McCain berates him right outside the floor of the Senate.
Which everybody can see.
Right. McCain I talked to McCain this week about something else, and I asked him about that. He said, I did lose my temper at Shelby, and I was right to. He looked me in the eye, and he lied to me, and I would lose my temper again today.
I'm started to, right?
Right, he started to right on the phone. I'm not so sure that's so unattractive.
There was a cartoon in the papers recently, I don't know who, I've forgotten who did it, saying, well, temper, and here is Dwight Eisenhower's picture and Lyndon Johnson's picture. Should have had Harry Truman's picture up there. When a critic of the Washington Post complained about his daughter Margaret's singing ability, I mean, Harry Truman wrote a letter that would have curled anyone's hair, even mine. Yes, exactly.
Good. And we will be back with more in just a moment.
This week on the Campaign Trail, brought to you by Fidelity Investments.
The field today looks like the Garden of Eden. But in February of 1945, mayhem, shelling, I got a shrapnel wound to the spine. It literally changed my life. When the war was over, I started a small business and invested for my future. I never would have guessed that I would end up with a lot more than some war stories and a house to pass on to my kids.
Martin Lagan invests responsibly with Fidelity. We can help you do the same. Visit Fidelity.com.
We keep families strong. We mend broken hearts. We make people smile. We're the people of Pfizer. We develop medicines that make the world a better place. We spend over $2.5 billion a year on research. That's why we believe we'll introduce more new medicines for more diseases than anyone else. We're not just looking for cures, we're going to find them. Pfizer. Life is our life's work.
Contrary to some opinion, e-commerce isn't just about selling things. It's about connecting people in business. To their customers, yes, but also to their partners and colleagues, and to anybody else that makes business go. At Microsoft, we've helped thousands of companies build e-commerce solutions easy enough for any business to use. Because if everybody's connected, business works better.
Rocks. Some people skip them, stack them, or just plain ignore them. But then there's these Texaco people. They love the darn things. Obsess over them. Go to the ends of the earth to find them. They study them. They scan them. Even taste them. Why? You find the right rocks. You find the energy the world needs to keep on running. Texaco. A world of energy.
Every moment, every dream, every challenge, for every step you take in life, there's GE, a financial partner you can trust. Take advantage of our expertise in insurance and investments and get the innovation you've come to expect. So think of GE when you think of insurance and investments for every step you take.
I'll bet you were pretty nerdy when you were young, and I bet you think you're pretty cool now. Well, hotshot, why not spend some time with a kid? Be a mentor. You can change his life just by being there. Then two people will think you're really cool. Put children first.
Now, here's a look at what's coming up on ABC News.
Tomorrow on Good Morning America, Bill Cosby talks about the loss of his son Ennis and what he's doing to preserve his legacy. On World News Tonight, is a malaria epidemic possible here? What's causing infectious diseases to spread quickly? And Sam, technology and rock and roll in one place. Go interactive with pop icons the Eurythmics. How has technology affected their music? Log on to Sam Donaldson at abcnews.com.
Sam, technology, and rock and roll all in one place?
Hit me again. It doesn't get any better than that. I mean, on Friday we had George W. Bush, we had Bono, the lead singer of U2, and we had two people talking about internet addiction.
And tomorrow you have?
The Eurythmics. But tomorrow I've got some competition. A fellow named Bill Clinton is going online for an hour and a half to take questions. My friends, this is the future.
Yes, but Sam, he's not a wily professional. Well, that's all for this Sunday. Until next week.
You want to bet?
This week.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.